Oh, let me tell you something. Larry Elder, he's a really good guy, but his sources are criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions wrought. The people countering Social Security corruption have collusions with it through their sources. These are collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court's names being and having been used remotely at the same time with the police forms. And the differences of the guilt with the intelligence at the news locations or next to it, at and next to Fox Connecticut News, are wire crime action methods distinct from their roles with WFSB that has roles fabricating telephone transcripts and changing and faking and hiding digital evidences with sexual and medical offenders of kids forced, and through the people pretending passions and emotions to defend them when people call the school and catch them. Then they put charges like harassment and things like that for calling back when they leave all these messages, cut the person, don't let the person speak at all, and make all these confessions and say untrue things, demonstrations, never have to speak, and then they use the number of the calls. For example, the investigators never stop being used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They have name switching in the positions with the campuses. New Britain Superior Court has victims advocates increasingly involved with plural criminal enterprises and with private ones and with families with their educators that didn't even have classes, never even see them around the schools, the other kids. They're putting fake things in databases and acting tied to it. Acting tied to predicate acts, no. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others and about the World Trade Center attack as World Trade Center attack predicate acts and roles with them before and after the World Trade Center. They're covering that up. With foreign and domestic military, too, they are leaking. And worse than criminal incompetence. I've been asking you to get them on paper with the interbranch. A bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court have roles of foreign and domestic military and names on up the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court's names in the police forms. Wethersfield police fake conversations with me as a kid, now as an adult. They increasingly have people involved with Social Security and other systems involved with mass medical scams, like under with mental health. They have a bunch of people at the Institute of Living on the campus of Harvard Hospital, involved with the triage, the security, and their roles with foreign and domestic military, as collusions with the World Trade Center attack too, and the investigators of it, worse than war crimes roles. And they're pretending forcing everyone to speak through others, changing and faking evidences. Mass evidences racketeering worse than war crimes has been standing where they make sides of issues and speak about guilt, leaving out their own. Their uses remotely of their own kids' differences and of their own, in other words. And they're fishing, like they bring up, like they're trying to make examples of free speech, like reusing Epstein, in other words. Because and they're fighting to have a debate about the legitimacy of the FBI. We have black people's rights of eyes to discern. Not one FBI director has been competent here, and we would teach them. They would work with us if you would follow mandated law, but they're not following mandated law. So please have Fox Connecticut News fix the fake conversations and ties to me that their sources pretended, and the intelligence next to them pretended with WFSB that attached me to fake conversations with themselves. They were increasingly collusions with the sources of WTNH at corners of streets. There's an O'Neill family that works with the kids in West Hartford, who has kids in Wethersfield, who sought me out through others. I never had a conversation with them in my life. They have some digital and wire crimes and federal evidences crimes and wedding forensics, and with some sexual and medical offenders of kids and people from Saudi Arabia involved with them, and people on up the corrections offices of Connecticut and the judicial branch offices. They have roles with they're with a whole bunch of other countries tied to their reporting of the community street takeovers. Now these are kids that are going to be caught doing bad things because they're getting confessions through the people that are putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to them to strangers and trying to make fake exceptions. And it's manifest that way relative to where and how they are being and have been used remotely. As we can discern this relative to World Trade Center predicate acts. You guys are changing and faking our short words and then pretending you don't understand us roles. There's a Joshua Julian who's involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with a Phil Cololo, and a whole bunch of other people tied to them, with a principal upskirt Nature's campus. The Facebook page of that campus, Facebook themselves, and the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court has rape threats that were involved with forcing that principal child abuser, and wire crime and mail crime acts methods, falsified police reports roles. A Kerr family said he planted evidences with people all along Route 3 through time, and he's going to pretend other. They're going to pretend other as a family will involved with kids and adults all along Route 3 with the intelligence community and former mayors. Increasingly, a former mayor, Gold, has all kinds of federal evidences crimes and rolls with child abusers, leaders of Kids First Force, identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shift roles, evidence is planting offensively at locations. All natures of investigators in their campuses never stop being used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. That's one of the reasons they can't even get witch trials correct, even though it's right next to our founding locations. And they can't even explain that the way our founders communicate to have our founders, plural, understood as James Madison, and how he had to counter extort the other presidents and the other colonists and the other Native Americans. And I say other because nature itself too shows us as president/chief and other things shows us that colonists and Native Americans coupled to an extent to force the rest of the founders to the best they could, get them to break as best they could. Roles from the collusion between the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, and the breaching method, and the different countries involved with the slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies, even slavery against our black people's rights of eyes. The same method, sickly. In other words, our founders had declassified for themselves and declassified what we have separated from their words. We know that they did not have free speech. Why and how? People are getting away with pretending that's debatable. The breaching method showed the experts they need to keep the ignorance of others, to hide their own, and their uses of knowledge of good and evil to get over on correlation nature. Because even an ignorant little kid could see right through the best speakers on American history. They're fake. They were child abused, to not be able to discern it and to have to debate it. And to defending their debates in ways and styles reliant upon criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature that are also in place of what our founders communicated about the breaching method. But you guys have other communicated for our founders for themselves. Because not only was campuses A through Z used sickly distinctly and sickly not, but non-distinctly, but also to use that left out with where and how that's a subject increasingly being demonstrated to us of increasing importance. There are collusions with names next to each of the campuses that are connected. And there are methods recording usually that. Interbranch has wire and mail crime methods and roles recorded that we could discern self-value with all natures of investigations. Investigators use remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. As their value is of uses of words like crimes, black pupils. We have black pupils' whites of eyes to discern them with predicate acts with facts methods and collusions with all natures of guilt assignments. In other words, have you seen the scumbag prisons? And that's because they're criminals. These people are involved with more predicate acts with facts and sick natures and criminal incompetence with words like value and law. That's why they can't get on paper into branch. That's why interstates, they've been with the courts, collusions with the news and terrorists and criminal enterprises in the same names at the World Trade Center next to it, in the court next to it. Sequence shifting and names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, also by the others involved, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with the different directors. And they put fake transcripts in databases and show that in the equivalent to presidents, like World Trade Center predicate acts, and their roles with the investigators of it. Hartford Hospital. They have rules also with a Dr. Shu and his family, his kids and family are involved with probate court judges and their family members and intimate ties, and superior court judges in the district court involved with predicate acts with the names at the judicial branch offices and conjunctive to that and to that. Also, increasingly time collusions with untimely deaths and with murders and body dumping spots at the same time brought up. All this stuff and other is recorded on Facebook, but Facebook has rules with evidences, racketeering, worse than war crimes, sequence shift, collusions with all kinds of digital crime methods, evidences, crime methods, and databases used as criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. In other words, there are proofs that, per what Sandy Hook campuses are confessing and demonstrating, they have roles with murders and pretending it was suicide. Plus, they have people that work with the, in other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence.